There are spiritual messages everywhere. We just need to be attentive to them. And if we see them, why, we realize the wisdom that they offer to us, the direction that they provide for us, the guidance that they can give to us. Spiritual messages are everywhere. Have you seen any lately? When I say spiritual messages are everywhere, I truly mean it because we just have to see them. You know, sayings, messages like that appear on the back of the seat in front of you in an airplane. The message that is bold, that looks at you as you are trapped in this small container of an airplane. And there the message speaks loud and clear. Your seat cushion is your flotation device. It's true, isn't it? Because so oftentimes in life, when we find ourselves thinking that we are drowning, that we are sinking, that we need something to keep our head above water, isn't it true that most of the time we realize that which we need to stay afloat, why we've been sitting on all the while? And it's called relationships. Yes, spiritual messages are everywhere. I see one every single day when I get into my vehicle. Why, I'm still old-fashioned. I was taught by my dad, I was taught by my driver's ed instructor to always use your side mirrors and your rear view mirror when backing up. Now, my vehicle has one of those backup cameras. Have never used it. Don't know what it's even there for. Because I'm still old-fashioned. I like to use the side mirrors. And every day when I get into my vehicle to back out of the garage, why, there is the message, the spiritual message that reminds me of an important truth. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. It's true, isn't it? Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. It's the spiritual message I offer to you and I as we reflect upon this very real, this very practical, this very difficult gospel reading today. The topic of conflict resolution. Gosh, we hate conflict. And usually, we prefer to deal with conflict the usual way. Ignore it. If we ignore it long enough, it'll go away. Or, if we don't ignore it, let's sweep it under the rug. Maybe, even though we keep tripping over it all the while, maybe eventually we won't notice it anymore. Or, the other way we deal with conflict is we deal with conflict by moving to the very last step in today's gospel. We treat people like Gentiles and tax collectors. We just simply dismiss them. It's easier that way, isn't it? When we have a brother or sister that we are in conflict with, a situation, a word that was spoken, why, something that was done that has caused hurt between us in this relationship. Rather than taking the first step that Jesus says, going to them directly one-on-one to resolve the difference, or even the second step, having somebody help us approach this person, why, we go immediately to the last step. We simply treat them like a Gentile or a tax collector. We throw them out. And yet, the gospel value, the gospel message of reconciliation calls you and I to not move so quickly to that final step in conflict resolution that Jesus outlines for us in today's gospel. No, the gospel value and message of reconciliation invites you to be mindful of the fact that the object in the mirror is closer than it appears. And what is the object? The object is the very presence of Christ that is in the person with whom we are in conflict with. The very object, the very presence of Christ that is in our lives as well. If we can begin with that insight, then we move to sitting down with that sister or brother that has wronged us, and we are not so quick to condemn. We are not so quick to judge. We are not so quick to blame. We are not so quick to simply give them a piece of our minds. But rather, once we begin with the view of Christ in them and in ourselves, then we realize that it is that very object, it is that very presence of Christ that will enable you and I to actually achieve what it is that we seek: healing, hope, and reconciliation. Because isn't it true that we are broken, and that we are sinners, and that we are imperfect, and that we struggle, and that we say things we shouldn't say, and we do things that we shouldn't do, and we don't do things we should do? And if that's true of ourselves, isn't it true then of our sister or brother who has wronged us, who has offended us, who has hurt us, who has caused us pain in our life? So then what shall we do about it? Well, let us not only embrace one another's brokenness and humanness and sinfulness, but let us always remember the truth of the message, the spiritual message that reminds us every day that the object in front of us is closer than it appears. Why? It is Christ. It is Christ who calls us and who seeks us to be reconciled.